Good, good. If you are returning, you have chosen the dark side. And if you're new here, thanks for checking this video out. I really do appreciate it. So today marks the third installment in my Skywalker Saga review. This is, of course, Star Wars Episode 3, Revenge of the Sith. And it is also a Steelbook film review. So here's the Steelbook. This is the front cover. It's okay. I'm not like a huge fan. Again, the Star Wars title is embossed, which is nice. I really like the back cover way more. I display them with the back cover showing because I think it looks so much better. The inside has art in it and I love it so much. It's just such an iconic shot from the film. I understand what the Steelbook producers were doing as far as trying to keep a certain tone with the Steelbooks, but I think a Steelbook with this as the cover would look just amazing. But still, the back cover is pretty awesome as well. Alright, so let's review Episode 3, Revenge of the Sith. The things I liked about this movie, the things I didn't like, I'm gonna talk about that, not in any particular order, however it's just coming to my mind, I'm just gonna talk about it. I literally finished this movie like 5 minutes ago, so it's fresh on my mind. I want to talk about it. I'm not sure how long this review is gonna be, but there's just so much to talk about of this. There's so much to talk about this movie, and I'm gonna have to edit out certain parts just because I don't want this review to be super long. So it might be a little jumpy. Now, this movie is the culmination of the past two movies, obviously. Wow. I think it's the best in the prequel trilogy. I think almost everyone who has seen the Star Wars films would agree with me. It's just a perfect combination of, like, the first two movies. I like that it incorporated Episode 1 with all the politics and Episode 2 with all the action, and it kind of, like I said, it kind of just blended all of it together, and that's what makes it the best installment in the prequels. This was directed by George Lucas. I think he had a little bit of help writing the story. I'm not really sure what happened behind the scenes, but this is definitely better. In my last review, I pointed out that personally I think George Lucas isn't the best director, and I still hold that opinion, but just because someone's not the best director doesn't mean that they don't have certain films that stand out more than some of their other films. And this is one of George Lucas's films that really stands out and is so much better than his other ones, in my opinion. I think the script is better. I really like the story. I actually read the novel before I saw this movie. This was one that was heavily not allowed, like, at all for quite some time because my parents saw the front cover of the movie and it looked really dark, so they said I couldn't watch it. So it took a while for me to finally see this movie. I thought the book was really good. I do recommend reading it. It gets a little bit more into some of the things that the movie doesn't, but it also is very close to the movie. So I don't know if the book was written first or after, but I would definitely recommend reading it if you like this movie, even if you don't like reading. It's a good read. Anyhow, we're talking about the movie, not the book. The CGI is a lot better in this film. It blends pretty well with what is a real set and what isn't, and it's not too glaringly obvious when they're different from each other. There are some gorgeous shots in this movie. I think of the prequel trilogy, this definitely has the most visually stunning cinematography. I have 3 shots from actually each trilogy that I just think are beautiful, and the prequel trilogy is this shot, and the sequel trilogy, 7, 8, and 9, is this shot, and of course, the original trilogy, 4, 5, and 6, is this shot. Yeah, aren't they beautiful? Okay, I'll get into that in a further review down the road. Anyhow, Hayden Christensen, his acting is more defined and comes across a lot better in this film. The love story between him and Padme is a lot. It's sort of a focal point because it drives the plot forward, but it's not as much as a focal point as Attack of the Clones. It's more just a few scenes with Anakin and Padme that are very brief, but she is a really important part of the story because she is what drives Anakin to really turn to the dark side. Obviously, it's not her fault, and she had no clue what was happening, but Darth Sidious, Emperor Palpatine, Chancellor Palpatine in this film, he promises Anakin that together they can save Padme from dying because the Sith have more power because the dark side leads to powers that are far beyond imagination or something. I know I'm screwing that line up. The dark side leads to pathways that would be considered unnatural or something like that. He's so afraid of her dying because of these nightmares that he has. And the last time he had these type of dreams was when his mother died. And so he feels it's prophetic. And he is willing to do anything to save the person that he loves, even if it means doing absolutely terrible things. I'm not saying it's okay at all, but I can totally understand where he's coming from. I have I wouldn't really know how to explain it. It's not like I can see into the future, but there are certain things that have happened in my life that have been major events that I have felt like in my soul, in my heart, that they were going to happen, and then within days or a couple weeks it has happened. And Anakin is terrified of loss. He's terrified of losing Padme. And I totally understand that. I was terrified of losing my best friend. And um, I just was terrified of it. And this was like 5 years ago. And one day at work, I got hit with this overwhelming feeling of loss. Out of nowhere. I don't know. Nothing was happening. Nothing triggered it. It just all of a sudden I got hit with this, and I can't really explain it other than when you lose someone important and it you get that feeling. Imagine that feeling being like getting hit by like a brick wall. That's what it felt like. It actually made me start to collapse. I actually sat down on the steps of where I was working, and I was on the phone actually with her at that moment, and I said, I just lost you. I can't talk to you right now. I'll call you back. And I just sat there so exhausted from this feeling of loss. And then a couple weeks later, um, she was gone. So I totally can relate to Anakin in this movie because of having those premonitions of losing someone really, really important to you. So let's move on from that. So this has some amazing action scenes right from the beginning of the film. It's got a great like space battle. It's super chaotic. It looks amazing. It's a great way to set up Obi-Wan Kenobi and Anakin's friendship because they're like working together and making quips and helping each other out while they're each in their own individual starfighters. I love the ships in this movie. Like I said, there's great spaceship battles. The action is really good. It drives the story forward, and never does the action in this movie feel like it's just there because, oh, let's throw in an action scene. It just feels like it's part of the story and it fits well with what's going on. Let's talk about probably the most famous and epic part of this movie, the end fight scene on Mustafar between Obi-Wan and Anakin. It's gotta be up there with like my top 10 favorite fight scenes of cinema. It's beautiful looking, it's intense. The reason it's so intense is not just because of John Williams' score and the actual battle itself, but because of everything leading up to it. Like, it's incredibly emotional. There have been times on occasion where I'll go and just watch the fight like on YouTube, and it's like, man, that was awesome, that was so cool. But then when you actually watch the movie in its entirety and everything leads up to that, it's so much more impactful to like watch, and the emotional weight is really what drives that action scene and just makes it almost, or maybe even perfection in my book. Interestingly enough about that, Steven Spielberg actually had a hand in that. He had a lot to do with the pre-production of that portion of the film. I guess he was trying to experiment into using some of the special effects and how to film using that kind of technique in mind. George Lucas handed that part, well, not in its entirety, but handed a great deal of that part over to him. I know Spielberg and Lucas are great friends. I mean, they created my favorite action hero of all time, Indiana Jones. So I know they're close and they work together partially on this film, and you can tell there's a little bit of the Spielberg touch there. You have George Lucas, Steven Spielberg, and John Williams all collaborating during that final climactic fight scene. And I think that's really what makes it so special. Alright, moving on from that, this review is getting long, so I'm going to try and speed it along. This is the best film score of the prequel trilogy. It combines many different themes from The Phantom Menace and Attack of the Clones, and it brings those together. And so subconsciously, as you're watching this, because you've seen the other two films and because of the musical themes for certain emotional parts of those two films, subconsciously, when he reuses them and slightly tweaks them in this film, you're getting your emotions stirred up in a similar way, not only because of what you're currently viewing, but because of what you have viewed. And that's the power of having the same composer for a set of movies, whether it's a trilogy or a complete series. If you can combine certain themes, you can really get in touch with people's emotions, and John Williams is a master of that. Howard Shore is also a master of that with the Lord of the Rings trilogy and the Hobbit trilogy as well. Part of the downside of this movie is it is 2.5 hours, which I don't have much of a problem with, other than it really does feel like 2.5 hours. The pace is pretty good, and I do enjoy like almost every minute of it, but it feels like 2.5 hours when you watch it. Supposedly, there's like a 4-hour cut of this rumored to be out there somewhere. I know originally it was a 4-hour cut that they obviously had to trim down like significantly. There has been rumor going around that someday a 4-hour cut of this film might be released, and it will probably be a lot darker in tone, which I would absolutely love to see that. There's a really good fight scene in this movie that it's so, like I said, it's weird because it's like really good, but it's also extremely disappointing. When Mace Windu and 3 other Jedi go to confront and arrest Chancellor Palpatine because now they know that he's the Sith Lord that's been manipulating everybody and pulling the strings and keeping this war going because he's actually been on both sides of it. And so when they go to arrest him, very quickly Palpatine kills the other 3 Jedi. And I like understand it that they're trying to show that like Palpatine is so powerful with the dark side of the Force that he just easily overwhelms them. But there's 4 Jedi there, and none of them attack him like together. It almost feels like they kind of just like stand there and get killed. And then Mace Windu, like, holds his own against Palpatine. So it's like, how can one Jedi hold his own against Palpatine, almost kill Palpatine, but yet when it's the four of them combined, like, they suck at it. Honestly, that's, like, one of the only things I would change about this movie if I could. I do like about this movie that it really shows how traumatic Anakin Skywalker's whole story really is, and how so much from his childhood and teenage years formed him into being the man we see in this film. You can tell he's deeply conflicted and deeply traumatized, and it just leads him down that path to being more susceptible to the dark side. And I really like how this film focuses on that, and not just like, oh, he'll turn to Darth Vader because he has to. The writers did it in a way that's not just, like I said, oh, he has to be bad. It's more like, let's show him really turn bad and why, and all the inner pain and sorrow that leads him to turning bad. I think that about wraps it up. What did you think of this film? Comment below. I'd be very interested in your thoughts. Like this video and subscribe if you would. I would much appreciate it. Every like I get and every new subscriber I get does help me hopefully get towards my goal of having a lot of subscribers someday, so I would much appreciate it. Thanks for watching this review. May the Force be with you, and I hope you see me in the next video, which will be tomorrow, May 4th, on May the 4th be with you day. So thanks for watching. My name is Aaron, and goodbye.